My name is Brian Gallagher from Ancestry, and I'm here with genealogist Liz Palmer. Liz, you work at the Library of Birmingham. How do you feel the role of libraries, or what do you feel the role of libraries is in preserving family history or helping people discover their family history?
Well, I think it's really important. I mean, we're not totally unique in Birmingham, but our archives are housed within the library as well. So we've got both the local studies department, which has lots of published material, trade directories, electoral registers, all those sort of things, and we have the archives where we've got original material as well. And we also have a range of PCs, so people can come and use computers and access Ancestry for free. So if they're beginners, that's really useful until they've got a taste of it and then maybe want their own subscription. And we can be on hand to guide and point them in the direction of the resources. A lot of our material held in Birmingham, it's in Birmingham Archives, parish registers, rate books, calendars of prisoners are on Ancestry now, so that's really useful and a really good way of being able to access them. But then we do have lots of records that aren't, so it's about being able to guide people in the right direction and show them what else there is which has yet to be digitised.
And do you notice the same trends keep coming up time and time again when people are looking for their family history, or has it evolved or changed over time?
I think in the time that I've been working in the field in Birmingham at the library, it has changed. I mean, more and more people are starting off online, and I think one of the problems there is, although there's a wealth of resources, is people don't understand the type of resources they're looking at. So I think it's important where we can that we're able to educate people into what the difference is between some of the records, so they don't just say, oh, I found something online, and then you say, well, where was it? Oh, well, it was online. And was it somebody's family tree? Was it a birth, marriage and death index? Was it a baptism entry? What was it? So increasingly we're having to try and guide people into what the resources are, whereas I think when I first started, most people that came in, they'd been doing it for a while, paper-based research, and understood the difference between the different types of records, and I think that's where hopefully we and other people can educate more into what they are.
You gave a talk here yesterday about the Birmingham coroner's records. What sort of information are contained within those, or what can you get out of that if you're researching family history, for example?
They cover a range of things. Obviously they're looking at why, where, how somebody died, so they can be quite distressing sometimes. But I think they're a much underused resource, because people might know from a death certificate that there has been an inquest. They might find a newspaper report. It depends on how sensational the death was, whether it's covered in the newspaper. But by finding the originals, they can actually see the process that might have been gone through, and also they will see even sort of effectively hear the voices and the statements that are written down from family members, maybe from neighbours, workmates, or whatever. They name lots of people, so it's not simply about the death of the deceased. It tells you a lot about the circumstances in which they were living just prior to that moment when they expired. It will name police officers that might have attended a scene. It will name medical people that have been there. One of the examples I used yesterday in my talk was about a young man who was an omnibus driver, of horse-drawn omnibus, and he had an accident. So it names his wife. It names a lad who's standing on the street who witnesses it. It also named, obviously, the omnibus company that he was working for. And at the end of my talk, somebody came up to me and he said, "Really interested in your talk. And when I tell you my name, you'll know why." And I expected him to tell me the surname of the deceased, and he didn't. He gave me his name, and it was the surname of the cab proprietor. And he said, "I thought my ancestor was working there, but I can't tie it up. But that's really interesting to know that yes, he did actually have a cab company, and that's the first evidence I've seen of it." So they name all sorts of people, and I think they're much overlooked. And I do have a bit of a taste for the macabre as well, so they appeal to me.
I was going to ask, when you say macabre, I mean, there's lots of distressing information there, murders, suicide. Is it emotionally challenging at any point reading some of these documents?
In preparing a talk or something, when I went through sort of several box loads and pulled them out, then yes, it is. I think with ones that are sort of 19th century and before, there's something about time that gives a bit of an emotional distance sometimes. But some of them are tragic stories. Some of them. One of the examples I used yesterday was of somebody who had fought in World War One and had suffered shell shock. He'd died in 1929 as a result of suicide. Now that, yes, it's tragic. It's very emotionally challenging, and the more I found out about this particular man, I found out how he was a contemporary of Tolkien. His papers have now recently been lodged at Magdalen College Archives. He was an unpublished writer, and you read the inquest and it tells you how troubled he was. And there's probably no other way that you could find that information. So I think it's not simply about family history research. I mean, it's about finding out its social history. It's documenting things in a way that. And hearing people's voices, I think, that may not be heard in other ways as well. So I think they can be challenging.
What's the most shocking or interesting thing you read? What made you stop for a moment?
When I was preparing my talk, then I actually wanted to pick mainly ones that I thought were actually fairly common or garden. I didn't want to go for the shock factor. It's too much, really, and you don't know who's in the audience and what might trigger something. One of the shocking ones that one of my colleagues pointed out to me, she said, "Oh, were you using that one?" And I had a look and decided no. Was a story where the coroner was involved because it was early 20th century, and it was a woman who was taking payment. She was running her own undertaking business. Her husband had been an undertaker, and I think he'd gone out of business, but she'd picked it up. She was obviously working at the lower end of the market, and she was taking payment from people for burying the remains of stillborn or infant children. And what used to happen was they were quite often put in a coffin with somebody else, because if somebody couldn't pay the full fee, they would sort of get around it. So she'd be paid 2 and 6, and she would make arrangements and pass it on. The problem was she seemed a bit lackadaisical, because on a tip-off they went to her house, and in the cellar they found several cardboard boxes or wooden boxes, and all in all they found the remains of, I think it was about 31 babies. Some of them might have been stillborn. I think they managed to identify about 3. These days, of course, with DNA, you might be able to find a bit more. The ones they could identify were because if there was something, personal possession, or from the clothes, if they got clothes on or whatever. So that was extremely shocking. But I've seen others not on that scale. There was no suggestion that she'd murdered anybody, or even that any of the children had died of that route. It's just sort of shocking how that was maybe how people with not much money went down, and she was taking advantage of them for what.
That's quite disturbing, I have to say, as a story. In family history terms in general, if you could give one piece of advice to people starting out on their family history journey or their family tree, what would it be?
Oh, just one. In the family history workshops that I do on a freelance basis, I always say, well, as general advice, start with what you know, but talk to anybody that's still around if they are, but also check any paperwork that there might be, whether it's lurking in lofts, backs of wardrobes and things. So start with what you know and work backwards, and verify everything. Don't take it at face value what somebody else says. Find evidence, and if possible find more than one piece of evidence for every fact that you put in, and document things. This is do what I say, not what I do, because I've found things and I think, how did I know that? Where did I get it from? Document everything you've looked at, even things you've looked at where you haven't found a result.
I think that's 5 pieces of advice there in total. If people want to find out more about your professional business as a genealogist, where can they find out more?
I trade under the name of Greenhill Genealogy. I'm based in Birmingham, and I do family history workshops, I do freelance research for people, and I go out and give talks to groups such as U3A groups, family history societies, etc. So yes, I'm based in Birmingham, available to do research, and find me on my website. I write an infrequent blog at Greenhill Genealogy on wordpress.com, so people can follow me there.